very tightly packed urban area, a suburb of southern suburbs of Beirut, Lebanon's capital. And now we're hearing there is gridlock on the roads as people try and get out. People try and move north here to the centre of Beirut or further north and out and further up into northern Lebanon. It's extremely difficult because everybody's on the road and it's very difficult for people to move. There is no indication so far from the Israelis to what the deadline for this forced evacuation is, as to when people must have left. They didn't make that clear. We had all afternoon an Israeli drone flying overhead, the noise clearly audible around here. That's stopped for the time being, but that will have been identifying targets that Israel feels it wants to hit in those southern suburbs. So for at the moment, tens of thousands of people perhaps trying to get out of southern Beirut to the north.
All right, that's Al Jazeera's Bernard Smith live for us in Beirut. Bernard, thanks so much. All right, let's head now to Ramallah and speak to Nida Ibrahim, who's tracking Iran's retaliatory attacks on Israel. Nida, so we've been getting reports of early warning sirens after detecting Iranian missile launches. What more do you know?
Well, we heard the sirens, Mohammed, just in the past few minutes after the early warning was sent to the Israelis through the home front application. But we heard not only the sirens, but also sounds of loud explosions. And usually when we hear them from here, from Ramallah, this means that the launches are targeted towards the central area that includes Jerusalem, the Dead Sea. Of course, we talk about the occupied West Bank as well. As we know, people here have no missile air defense systems or any sort of even guidance on where to go or no shelters to go to. But this is the latest wave of attacks that came from Iran. Roughly monitoring this war and comparing it to the 12-day war in June, we can say that the number of rockets is a bit less. And that could be because Iran is trying to prolong the war and show that it can disrupt life in Israel as much as it could and not launch all missiles at the same time. But indeed, we're seeing some signs of easing of restrictions in Israel, where the Israeli authorities have decided to move to a less degree of restrictions in terms of Israelis gathering. Now gatherings are allowed until 50 people. That's the maximum amount of people that are allowed to gather, as well as the Israeli finance minister allowing, he had already been lobbying for more businesses to open. Now a little bit more businesses can be open if they have access to shelters. Of course, we've seen the Israeli planes bringing those stranded abroad into Israel. One of these flights have been disrupted because of these Iranian-led and Iranian-sent missiles into Israel. But in general, the talk in Israel is about some sort of easing of restrictions altogether.
And Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, had confirmed that ground troops are now holding and advancing in southern Lebanon. I want to ask you about what the overarching strategy is here, and what does he mean exactly by saying that?
Well, Israel and Israeli army officials have never hid their motives and their intentions in Lebanon, which is to try and occupy as much land as possible to create what they call a security buffer zone. But as we've seen from Israel's behavior in the region, it tries always to move the battle into other territories than its own territories. It also tries to occupy lands under the disguise of security. So when the first salvo of rockets, it was only 3 projectiles sent from Iran from Lebanon, into Israel a few days ago. We've seen the Israeli officials swiftly act and start these waves of escalations, the latest of which, Mohammed, we've been discussing in the past hour or so with the new evacuation threats that are targeting inside Beirut itself. But it seems